Welcome, everybody. Welcome, everybody joining. We just figured we started very briefly with a quick welcome and a quick introduction to the best practices in storytelling and how to effectively engage the stakeholders. Now, this workshop is co-hosted by BlueMissionAA and PREP4BLUE. And my colleagues and myself are very happy and excited to have you all here. And we look very much forward to having an exciting workshop with you all. Maybe a quick introduction into PREP4BLUE. PREP4BLUE sets the foundation for the co-creation and co-implementing the research and innovation required to achieve the mission, restore our ocean and waters. So what PREP4BLUE does is providing us with methods and tools for missions and mission, ocean, and waters. Now they do this for all of the lighthouses. Lighthouses are basins, and we have 4 of these, which include the Atlantic, the Arctic, the Mediterranean, and the Danube. And if I have this wrong, somebody I'm sure will be raising their hand in a second and will correct me. The Baltic and the North Sea. Okay, we were close there. So BlueMissionAA, then we are building a coordination hub to support the mission implementation. So what we do in Blue Mission is focusing on the preservation and the restoration of marine and coastal ecosystems. So please do check out our websites if you haven't done so yet. There is plenty of opportunities to get involved in both projects and support us in delivering the mission oceans. A quick happy news from yesterday, BlueMissionAA was also awarded the Healthy Oceans and Resilient Coasts award at the Atlantic Stakeholder Platform Conference. So we're very happy that we did that or achieved that yesterday. But now, without any further ado, I will stop sharing. I will hand over to my colleague, David Whyte, who will talk about the mission ocean and where that comes from and why that is important. David, are you ready?
I am, yeah, thanks, Jess. And hi, good morning or good afternoon, everybody. I'll just take 2 minutes to kind of explain Mission Ocean a little bit more and contextualize the work that we're all doing within this kind of new policy framework that has kind of come out about 2 years ago. I imagine that a lot of people in the room today are familiar with the mission, maybe very familiar with the mission, but just in case they're not, and for the benefits of the recording for people afterwards, I'll just give a quick explanation. So I suppose calling the mission is kind of, on a superficial level, it's the kind of marine policy framework that sits under the Green Deal, but that's not really doing it justice, because the European Union and the European Commission from about 2021, 2022 have moved from a kind of a sector-based to challenge-based approach to thinking about policy. And so I suppose what the significance of that means is that, you know, in like sector-based approaches to making policy is very good for kind of more simple problems. And I suppose this was the way that innovation policy was done for a long time. But the point is that the world is very complex and the challenges we're facing are very complex. And so, you know, thinking about, okay, well, what we need microchips, let's support microchips, is probably the wrong way to think about things. You know, what we need is smart, digital and green sustainable cities. Like, that's the mission, and the technology will follow. So if you know, again, if you kind of think about Mission Ocean, you know, if we kind of, you can think about piecemeal things like, okay, well, we need, you know, restorative technologies, we need marine protected areas, but these are all disconnected. Instead, if we think like we need restored pollution-free marine ecosystems, that's the mission. And, you know, that takes everything, you know, with into account, the citizen engagement, the technology it will be needed, the science, the engineering. So it's that shift in thinking towards a mission-based policy thinking. And so Mission Ocean is one of 5, soon to be 6 missions, just to give the others a mention. There's Mission Climate, Mission Cancer, Mission Smart Cities, Mission Soil, and recently announced is a mission called the New European Bohos, which is a sustainable design mission, and it will be launched, or it's being launched currently. So they have very ambitious goals and hopefully will deliver concrete results by 2030. Just to give you a sense of them, sorry, can I go forward? On the top here, these are Mission Ocean's 3 overarching objectives: protecting and restoring marine freshwater ecosystems. By the way, I presume we can share these slides afterwards with participants, can we? So yeah, no need to try and furiously write these down. preventing and eliminating pollution, and making the blue economy carbon neutral and circular. And what I've got under here is within the Mission Ocean Implementation Plan, there's a very clear objectives in terms of citizen and stakeholder engagement. So all of us working in the marine space in European waters between now and 2030 should be thinking about how we can orient our work so that, you know, any engaged work with citizens and stakeholders, so that it's hitting one or more of these and doing so in a way that it affects, like pushes up and affects one or more of these. Again, these are taken, by the way, from the implementation plan between pages 26 and 36, and we can share a copy of that as well, along with the slides afterwards for anyone who wants to have a look through. So I think that's enough mission framing for now. I can stop there and we can talk a bit more about it later.
Thank you, Dave. So we're thinking the framework of this workshop is that we first do some scene setting. So we have 3 panelists who will talk about some experiences that they had in projects and in restoration projects. And then after that, we will have a very interactive session where we invite everybody to participate and help us with the storytelling and how to develop the stories. So first up, we have Massimiliano Pinat. He will talk about the IMPRECO project. Are you ready, Massi?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Massimiliano Pinat, and I work for the Institute for Biological Resources and Marine Biotechnologies of the Italian National Research Council. Since the theme of the day is storytelling, I will tell you a story, my story. This is me about 15 years ago when I took my first steps in the working world, but this is also the story of the Isonzo River Mouth Regional Natural Reserve, where I began working as a project manager. This protected area lies along the last 15 kilometers of the Isonzo River in the northeast side of Italy. And this protected area, a good part of it, had been subject of important environmental and ecosystem restoration interventions in the 90s, thanks to important, relevant public funding that also supported the management system of the local biodiversity and habitats. But around 2008, the music changed. Due to a series of new socio-economic needs and critical issues, the regional authority decided to drastically cut funding for protected areas, justifying this intervention with the need to invest in activities and sectors with highest socio-economic returns. We therefore decided to roll up our sleeves and work towards the definition of a new management model. We involved some other protected areas, and together we launched the project, and then the Italian-Slovenian cross-border network of Natura 2000 sites called ADRIREEF 2000. Among the many solutions that we studied and tested together, there was also a first environmental accounting system. Thanks to this work, we are not only able to account for the natural capital present in a natural reserve, but also to estimate what was the payback on the public investment in terms of the value of the ecosystem services provided by the protected area. Oh, I still remember a meeting with our regional authority in which we began to present this study with a simple equation, 1 equal to 8.74 euros back for every euro invested in the reserve. The paradigm changed. But increasing public funding could not be the only solution. As my friend Natasha used to say, if we do not involve local communities in the management, we'll never be able to reduce the pressure on biodiversity. We will continue to spend energy in a fight without winners. So, according to the so-called protected areas life cycle, the life cycle of a protected area should start with establishment of an area for conserving natural resources within its borders. The next step is the valorization of such resources by giving the community access to the protected area. And then the protected area itself should, first among others, experiment new sustainable development models. These last 2 stages refer to the so-called ecosystem services approach, which highlights the relationship between the ecosystem and the socio-economic system. On one side, the socio-economic system benefits from the natural resources, while on the other side, the protected area managers are called to manage ecosystems and the positive and negative impact affecting them. But once the sustainable development model is performed and adopted, it can be exported outside the borders that this way become permeable. Finally, in order to minimize the potential negative impacts on ecosystems, the protected area involves stakeholders in managing them. These last two stages refer to the so-called integrated management approach. In other words, it was time to become adults and work towards the development of a new model of community-based management of protected areas. So we started again from ADRIREEF 2000, which in the meantime received also some important international recognitions that helped us to expand the network throughout the Adriatic Ionian area and launch together a new project called IMPRECO. Initially, we mapped and assessed through a series of biological indicators, namely indicatory species, the state of health of the ecosystems in the pilot protected areas. It was possible by starting and putting together local biodiversity monitoring protocols. We strengthened them also with some citizen science actions. We gathered the collected data and above all the maps and data on habitats. Indeed, thanks to the biodiversity 2000 baseline approach with its Korean land cover classes, we are able to convert habitats into ecosystem types according to the hierarchical system of the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment. And this way, finally, on the basis of this reclassification, we had maps of ecosystems in our protected areas. The second step, it was relating ecosystem services to the selected ecosystems. We used the CICES classification. And at the end of this process, each protected area had its inventory of species, habitats, ecosystems, and ecosystem services. Third step was crossing stakeholder categories with ecosystem services and analyze their relationship, focusing on four main issues: benefit, impact, conflicts, and involvement. And for each issue, we made a qualitative assessment and a quantitative value. We gave a quantitative value. This way, we produced what you can see here, the so-called sensitive maps, a kind of dashboard for the management of ecosystems, because they identify from the supply side, the ecosystem services provided by the protected area, and from the use side, the stakeholders benefiting of the ecosystem services. Not only, they told us which were the most strategic ecosystem services for sustainable local development, the related ecosystem to be targeted with specific management measures, and who were the related most relevant stakeholders to be involved. After a long process for education and empowerment of local communities, stakeholders were finally engaged through the so-called joint task forces that are permanent local boards within the protected area management system, formalized thanks to some specific protocols for community-based management of the local ecosystems and their services. To this end, we collected in a repository and then analyzed with reference to the concerned ecosystem and ecosystem services some of the most promising best practices on ecosystem management and restoration worldwide. Together with the joint task forces, we selected the most appropriate ones for addressing the main issues dealing with the management of the sensitive ecosystem and their services, and we jointly apply them as pilot actions. Just to give you an example, at the Zone for River Mouth Natural Reserve, we focused on reducing the pressures from boating and surfing activities in areas where in some periods of the year, important species nest. So local boat and surfing associations recognize the value of the cultural ecosystem, and together we develop a behavioral code, and we develop also an app for smartphones, smartwatches to promote the code among their users and members, but also for pointing out the limits of the area, and as well as the areas of no disturbance according to the seasonal data on the species. I could tell you through the data collected about the results achieved by the pilots, about the improvements in the quality of the ecosystems, their functionality, and so on. I can also show you the long list of new measures we applied in the different protected areas, but I prefer to conclude this story with some images of the protagonists of this story. The local groups that actively participate in the management of the habitats, who carry out educational activities, the permanent committees which they consult and make decisions, the cleaning campaigns, and their ability today to achieve sustainable development starting from conservational goals. Thanks.
Thank you so much. There's already so much in there. For everybody, if you have any questions or comments, we do have a little bit of a Q&A after the panelists. But in the meantime, please use the chat and throw your questions in there, and we try to get to them throughout the session. Now, next up, we have Francesco de Franco, and he will give us the other side of the stakeholder engagement. Francesca, you ready to share your slides? Great. Perfect. We see them there. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning to all. I'm Francesco de Franco from the MPA of Torre Guaceto. Yes, I have a long story to tell, but I need to use only 10 minutes because Torre Guaceto is a marine protected area in Apulia region, so in Italy, in south part of Italy. We are now in our we are 30 years old, 35 years old as MPA, so it's a very old MPA in Italian system. And we had an evolution during the period according with the changing of the attitude of the stakeholders towards the protection of the nature. Just to tell you, we have some not certification, but some achievement in the management as the EMAS ecosystem, the regulation of EU for the environmental audit system. We are also an hotspot for biodiversity for the Mediterranean plan for the Barcelona Convention, so we are a biodiversity hotspot, and we are also included in the blue parts for the Marine Conservation Institute. That is an American institute that recognizes well-managed protected areas around the world. Just to underline very briefly, what is an MPA for Italian system? Because according with this idea of protection, there are different approach according with different legal framework in different countries. Where the space is available, like in the oceans MPAs, we can use the idea that marine protected area is a closed area with no human pressure, with no human activities, only for the conservation. For the Italian and Mediterranean, in general terms of view, in general terms, this idea is impossible because the Mediterranean area is very crowded with the human activities, with the human connection, and also remains of this use during the past, because we have the biggest civilization are in the Mediterranean basin. So when we talk about a protected area in Mediterranean Sea, we have protection, conservation, but also interaction with the stakeholders, with the local population, with the local needs, and with the local interests. So we need to create a balance between our conservation purposes and the involvement of the stakeholders, the taking care of their needs, because when we talk about some traditional activities like artisanal fishing, that is a very small scale type of fishery with with vessels under the 12 meters. So this is a very typical activity. We needed to take in account the importance in terms of cultural and traditional view. So we are a conservation of biodiversity, but also human diversity in our protected area. We are a relatively small MPA because we are 2,200 of hectares in marine part. We have also a terrestrial protected area with a different legal status, but it's a well protected terrestrial area. And you see there is a zoning inside the MPA with the uses are permitted or disallowed in the different, avoided in the different zones. So we have the no-take zones that is for our system is the normal zone A. So it's a zone with no human activities inside. But in general view, also the general reserve in yellow for our regulations is no-take zones, because is also is not permitted to take activities like professional or recreational fishing. And the partial reserve, so you see the light blue, the pale blue zone is a zone where is permitted to have activities like professional artisanal fishing and also recreational fishing. But we have also, you know, maybe in the European system, there is the Natura 2000 sites, is recognized under two directives, the habitat and the bird directives. And so it's like we can see as a European system of parks, but it's not the same for the, it's not really parks, but we can have this type of idea. But and you see is the striped part is very large. Is 3-4 times more than the MPA. But the conservation measures and the effectiveness in the conservation of in this type of sites for the Italian legislation is very ineffective, is very low. So we take in management this Natura 2000 site, but we know as managers that the possibility for us to have an active management on this site is very low. Now I described this because there is the continuation after this part. You see that in terms of biodiversity is very important, this part, and we need to protect because it's part of the biodiversity network inside our MPA. Very important, when the marine protected area started in 1991, after 10 years of no management, the management consortium was instituted with the creation of the terrestrial reserve, and we started to have a management in 2001. So we closed all the, at the time, illegal activities inside the MPA, because the fishery, the professional fishery, permitted under a regulation, and we at the time at the starting of our management there is no regulation, so it's impossible to have professional fishing. So we closed the activities in order to create also a period of renovation of the fishing stocks, and we started to have an engagement, a collaboration with the fishermen. In 2004, we started to talk with them to have a discussion about how to open these type of activities inside our MPAs. We started with the University of Lecce to try different types of gears, different frequency, different approach to fish inside the MPA in order but with the fishermen, involving directly the fishermen, in order to set up a regulation in collaboration with the fishermen, with the involvement of the fishermen, but also with the involvement of the scientific researchers, in order to create this balance between conservation and use of the MPA. And we create an agreement that is the initial step of the regulation of the MPA. And we closed this agreement in 2005. We presented inside our regulation to the environmental ministry, because it's in charge to approve this type of regulation, and we have the regulation in 2009. So the fishermen saw that their involvement was now in national law, because the regulation is a national law, type of national law. So the trust between us and the fishermen increased by this, because the fishermen saw that their involvement was now a really formal regulation. And it was very important, because our regulation is not very user-friendly. So, because the level of engagement of the fishermen is very high, because they are always to fish inside the MPA only once a week. So it's for them is a very is very it's not easy to have only one day inside the MPA during the week. And we set up with them the type of net. So trammel net is a type of gill net with a very is not very large, because it's only 1 kilometer and 200, and is 1.2 kilometers, and with a very large size, because consider that in Italy we can fish with a net between you see 2 millimeters, 2 centimeters between the knots, and we allowed only 30.5 millimeters between the knots. So it's more large than the normal allowed net, but this size was decided by the fishermen, because we proposed only a smaller size, but they decided to have a larger size. So it's very important. And so we use in our regulation different tools, different management tools, because we have the zoning, because only in the zone C is allowed. We set up the level of license, because it's opened only to the fishermen that lived before the approval of the regulation in Brindisi and Carovigno, that are the two municipalities involved in the MPA. Only small vessels, so very maximum 2 gross tonnage is very small vessel, and frequency with once a week, and also with the size, the decisions about the type of nets. But also another point very important in the involvement of the fishermen, that are always to be monitored very frequently, because all the years we have a monitoring of the fishing activities, in order the fishing efforts, in order to have scientific data to set up changes in the regulation. So they always this type of scientific monitoring, knowing that if the fishing effort is too high, we close the fishing activities. But they agreed in the regulation about this. But these are the results. So we can have different sites inside, larger than outside. And for the fishermen, is more important the size than not the quantity, because it's a different market price for this level. Okay, we started to I talked about the Natura 2000 sites. We decided as a manager to enclose this Natura 2000 site in an enlargement of the MPA in order to have more effective rules for the biodiversity conservation. But we needed to talk with the stakeholders. So we started a participatory process with them in order to decide with them this type of enlargement. They agreed to enlarge the MPA between the starting of this participatory process. But our initial idea is to have like a buffer zone. So to have rules about anchoring, about some types of activities, but you don't have rules about the fishing activities outside the actual MPA, because we know that it could be more impactful for the fishermen to have also this large Natura 2000 site with the strict regulation of their fishing activities. But when we started our first meeting with them, they asked to have no-take zones. So they asked to have in this enlarged MPA, to have also no-take zones, so with no fishery activities inside. So they decided to decrease their fishing efforts in terms of space, but they know that the benefit coming from this space closed to the fishing activities are benefit for them. So are for their benefits, economical benefits. So we started with them to have this type of activity, to identify the most effective no-take zones inside the proposed enlarged MPA. We also used geographical information GIS system to enforce our decisional process. We also involved the other type of stakeholders in terms of pleasure boating facilities, but also recreational fishermen, in order to propose to the environmental ministry this type of enlarged MPA with the agreement of the local stakeholders. That is very important, because when you have an agreement with the local stakeholders, you can have a more simple political process to have this type of approvals, because we can have a lobby, but it's a very positive local lobby to push this type of political decision, because consider that now we are enlarging involving different also municipalities. Just to say that the protected surface coming up to 4 times, and also the surface of the no-take zones is in line with the actual percentage of the no-take zones. Now we are discussing with the environmental ministry in order to this type of approval, but I close with this. It's very important when you manage a protected area to have, when you have an agreement with the local stakeholders, to have a conclusion of this agreement in the formal view. Because if you take too time to have a closing of this agreement, you can lose the trust with the local stakeholders because we have two different type of interest on the field. Our interest is to have biodiversity conservation. Okay, their interest is to maintain their livelihood, their condition for livelihood. So the weight of this type of interests are very different if you are in the point of view of local stakeholders or of fishermen. So we are now pushing the environmental ministry to have a closing of this enlargement in very short time, because we need to maintain the trust of the local stakeholders. So, and I close.
Thank you so much, Francesco. Jill, what I hear through it is this passion and this, I want to say this love for the community, but I'm also saying that this is important for not just from a management perspective, but also for the people living there. And I think that's a very important part when it comes to storytelling, to remember that we tell a story to represent the people in the communities, but then also tell a story into the management side of things. And we'll come back to that in the workshop. There is a question for you in the Q&A if you have a look, but we'll answer that after the final presentation. Thank you so much. Justine, are you
after? Okay, so I read it, but okay, after. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we have Justine Brossard on now, and she will talk about the co-management and co-creation models in Brittany and Catalonia. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Thank you very much, Jessica, for giving me the floor. So I will share my screen. 1 minute. And the diapo mode. I hope you can all see my screen and you can hear me well.
Yes, we can see it and hear you.
Perfect, thank you very much. So good morning, everyone. So my name is Justine Brossard. I work as a project and policy officer at the CPMR, and I will present you 2 best practices, one from Brittany region and one from Catalonia. So just very shortly, the CPMR is the Conference of Peripheral Maritime Regions. We are a network of more than 150 regions in Europe and beyond, and we campaign in favor of a more balanced development of the European territory. We operate both as a think tank and also as a lobby for the regions, and we are structured around the General Secretariat, the General Secretariat, sorry, and 6 geographical commissions. And I wanted to mention that the Atlantic Arc Commission is involved as a partners in the project Blue Mission Atlantic Arctic, and the Inter-Mediterranean Commission of the CPMR in the project Blue Mission Med. And so as part of PREP4BLUE, the CPMR will notably pilot 4 stakeholders assemblies in each lighthouse, and notably 1 in the Atlantic with a strong collaboration with Blue Mission Atlantic Arctic. So that's why also our participation in this in this workshop is to kickstart our collaboration with Blue Mission Atlantic Arctic, because through this pilot stakeholder assembly, we will notably aim to share best practices and also good stories of the participation of stakeholders in the management and in the activities for the preservation and restoration of marine and coastal ecosystems. So my first example is the best practice from the region of Brittany. I would like to present you the co-management model of the Iroise Marine Natural Park. So basically the governance structure of this park is multi-stakeholder. So the management board is composed of fishermen, local authorities, NGOs, experts, national administration, and also recreational users. So basically the decentralized and participative governance model of this MPA is really at the heart of this of its functioning. And the role of the management board will be notably in the elaboration of a management plan and also the annual action program. So what is the advantage of this multi-stakeholder governance structure for the MPA is that it will reconcile the interest for the preservation of this precious ecosystem and also the sustainable fisheries activities. So it will show that both activities, both interests can go together, let's say, and work very well. So one of the main success for this co-management model for this MPA is the restoration of the spiny lobster in the MPA. So basically, since 2007, there is a strong collaboration between the fishermen and also the scientists to restore the stock of this species that was clearly declining. So basically the fishermen themselves, they decided to ban the fisheries of this species for a certain period and also to increase the size of the lobster to be caught so that they avoid, let's say, the capture of juveniles, and also it's also like ensures the reproduction of the species. And the fishermen, they continue to strongly support scientists in the monitoring of the species. For example, they will notify the lobster that have been caught, and also they will mark, let's say, each species, let's say. And so in 2023, the monitoring activities will be pursued between the fishermen and the scientists. And just to give you an approximative numbers for to show you the success of this restoration of this species, that apparently in 2000 they were the fishermen per year, they were having almost 10 tons of this species, and in 2021 they could get around 75 tons. So they really contributed to the restoration of this species, and also they could. I mean, it was also good for them as an economic activity. And also since 2021, the fishermen, they collaborate in the project called RP to analyze the interactions between of the fishing activities and protected species. So, for example, they participated in the testing of measures to limit the bycatch of small cetaceans. And now I will move to the Mediterranean with the best practice from the region of Catalonia, their fisheries co-management model. So basically, this model is a decentralized management of the common fisheries policy, and it's the first EU formally regulated co-management governance model for fisheries. It has been adopted by a decree in 2018, and it's legally binding. So how it works? So it's based on co-management committees between, and so each committee is composed of fishermen, scientists, the administration, and NGOs. And each committee is in charge of a specific fishing area in Catalonia. And the decision-making process is based on a horizontal approach, so that each stakeholder they participate in the decision-making process, and the consensus is mostly used as a method to take a decision. So altogether, they will prepare the management plan, which is also legally binding. So what is the benefits of this fisheries co-management model? So it increased the co-responsibility and trust among all the stakeholders, and also the compliance in particular with the common fisheries policy. It also ensures a dialogue between fishermen and scientists so that there is a better understanding of the different issues, especially the environmental or economic issues, and it offers tailor-made fisheries management. This model has been recognized at the international level, notably by the FAO GFCM that awarded the region for this relevant model, and also the region of Catalonia presented this co-management model during a public hearing at the European Parliament Committee on Fisheries in January 2021. So that's it for me for this presentation, a brief introduction, let's say, of two relevant success stories of fisheries co-management model. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Justine. There was a lot in there that is just so inspiring. And like you said, the trust building of it is such a common theme, I think, across all of the panelists. We've seen that's what you need to do to stakeholder engagement is about trust building. At its core, obviously, there's many other parts that come to it. We move to the Q&A, and we have two questions there. Now, in the Q&A, there is... I want to ask about how to measure the impact of MPA for local communities. I'm not entirely sure if that was directed at Massi or Francesco, but Massi, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, it's fine. Technically, we can measure the ecosystem services through a set of indicators. They are namely the capacity indicators that mean that the capacity of ecosystem to provide a specific service. That we have the flow indicators that mean the actual use of that service. And it can be also split in another battery of indicators about the sustainability of the flow. And then we have the value or benefit indicators that measure the socio-economic value of that service as perceived by the community. So we can measure the ecosystem service, and this way we can also measure the impacts on the ecosystem, as well as the benefits towards, as I said before, the socio-economic system, or if there are some reductions in the flow or the value, we can also measure, let's say, the impact of the MPA towards the local community. Well, and if I go back to the example from IMPRECO model, that sensitive map I showcased before is more about the decision-making part, because we evaluate, assess together with the stakeholders in the stable board, generally the benefits and the impacts of a specific ecosystem service for the local community, as well as the conflicts. That means also the trade-offs in the use of the service. This is not really a measure, but it gives a picture about the relationship of the local community with that ecosystem and their services, so that you can decide together with them when you need to balance trade-offs, when you have opportunities for or needs for valorizing that service or reducing the impacts on that service. But that part is for decision-making, while as for assessment, the indicators I defined before are the best way for measuring.
Thank you for that. We have another question for Francesco there. What is the estimate figure of stakeholders relying on your MPA, and how diverse is your fishery resource?
Okay, just because I see that is also for another question. We assess the value of ecosystem services in our MPA. We found that for each €1 in conservation, the value of the ecosystem services for the communities is 12 euros. So it's a very very high level of benefit coming from the MPA for the local communities. Our fishing community is now inside the MPA 10 vessels, but outside is more than 20. Involved in the enlargement of the MPA. So it's not a very large community, but it's a local community. We have also two big marinas near the protected area with large vessels with industrial fishing, but we are very focused to have regulation in order to avoid this type of fishing activities. It's very important. A question about the free riders. I see. It's a very relevant question about this because we see the sea, the oceans, but also the sea as a common available for everyone with no rules. Because it's very too big. Oh, you see, the sea is big, so there is no limit for the resources. But it's not. We have limited resources, and we need to use these limited resources for the professional fishermen. So we have a very large problem in the Mediterranean Sea with you see recreational fishermen. Because it's not recreational fishermen, is illegal fishing, because there is a very low level of rules for the for the recreational fishing. So we have a big problem with them. In our regulation, we create a barrier between recreational fishermen and the professional fishermen, because the recreational fishermen can fish only along the coast with no boats, so there is no competition. But it's very important because if you see free riders, we have illegal activities, and the cost of the surveillance is very high, and the impact for the local community is very high. So we founded a project in order to have a very high level of video surveillance during this year. We hope that we can use in the coming year, in the next coming year. But you see, we invested more than 300,000 euros about this, and you see that the balance between this type of investment and the economical importance of this type of fishing activities is very unbalanced. So we need to have the idea as MPA managers that artisanal fishing is a traditional and cultural value, is not economical value, is not an economical sector, is a cultural and traditional and social part of our community, is not an economical community, is not an economical importance, and we need to treat and we need to conserve, to protect this type of values as part of our history. And also considering that the traditional and the local fisheries is the more sustainable type of fisheries that we can allow in our seas. And we need to consider that if we continue with the industrial approach for the fishery activities, we can have proteins coming from the fish species for the next 30 years. After that, also the industrial fisheries are not economical activity, because the the level of cost to reach more deeper fishing stocks should be too high in order to have an economical gain. So we need to have a different approach also in the fishery funds, in the fishery policies of European maritime affairs, because we need to consider that local and communities of fishermen are the more, the community that needs to be protected and to preserve it for the future.
Absolutely. And I think we all agree with you there. We need to consider the people that are living at the coastal areas and really understand their issues and their problems and understanding where they're coming from, but then also building a future that is sustainable for them. I think we all agree with that. I see David has his hand up.
Yeah, can I just briefly go back to the first question on how to measure the impacts on communities from MPAs? I'd also add to what Massi said, the importance of collecting qualitative data in that, because impacts on communities aren't always easily quantifiable, but then nonetheless essential to capture. So like things like community cohesion increasing, or like a general sense of happiness and well-being, and kind of like being like at ease with your environment over a couple of years, and from the experience of interacting with MPA management or something like that. And so one way of collecting that kind of data might be to do retrospective interviews, like interviews 5 years after an MPA has been set up or something like that, about the experience with different stakeholders from different parts of the community. And of course, in doing interviews, what you'll be doing is collecting stories. And you can do really nice things with that. One group that does this really effectively is called Fair Seas in Ireland. I'll put the link into the chat. And basically an MPA, I suppose, to kind of be a bit slightly reductive, an MPA log B group, but they support the development of MPAs in Ireland, and they do video interviews with communities about their relationships with the sea and what an MPA would mean if it was set up at the coast for them. And you get a variety of different opinions, but you get very, very rich stories and a very rich way of presenting that data, which is also essential.
I agree. Massi, you have your hand up as well.
Yeah, just a quick comment to what Dave said. Yeah, I confirm. I explained theoretically how we can measure impacts, benefits, and so on. And the indicators, we can find indicators in literature that can be applied to different situations, to different ecosystem services. So they are, when you go to the value indicators, of course, we have interviews, but we have also some economic metrics, because if we talk about, for example, production or fishery sector, of course, we can also measure the value of the fish stock on market and blah, blah. But yeah, interviews are important, and interviews are a way for collecting stories. I confirm absolutely. And also in IMPRECO, one of the things we did at the end of the pilot was recording the stories from their protagonists and share them in the repository as example about what we have done. So we have not told the stories by ourselves, but we let the stakeholders to tell their stories about that experience. And one thing more, when I said that we set up these stable boards, it's a very important arena where you can time by time collect their feedback, their stories, and work on them lively, because it's a round table where they come and they say, okay, we are managing that ecosystem, we are increasing the benefits, but this is what is happening. It's not just about numbers, it's not just about questionnaires. It's really live stories that you can get time by time, and you can also create some dialogue between them. Sometimes it works, sometimes not, I have to be honest, but at the end it's better than work by impersonal communication tools. You have a place where they can discuss and most of the times find solutions together. So I absolutely agree with you on your point of view.
And we're going to get into creating our own story in just a minute. So the last comment from Francesco before we move into the interactive bit. Francesco, you have the floor.
Yes, I am agree that is not only number. We don't use only a number perspective, only a metrical perspective, because we need to consider. We was a part of a very large process in Italian system about environmental accounting in our MPAs. But we need to be very careful about this, because we can create some model in order to describe, to create a connection between an economical value and ecological value. We can use different models, but we don't need to don't lose the perspective that the ecological value, the ecosystem services are not valuable, as are unestimable in terms of you see supervivenza. You know, I am you in terms of surviving of our species, because we need to maybe stress the idea that there is an economical benefits. It's very important, because if you can demonstrate that inside the MPA the economical gain, the economical income is 4 times higher than outside, it's an economical benefit. It's a benchmark. It's a confrontation between inside and outside. It's important, but we need to be very careful in order to give an economical value for habitats, for species, for other type of ecological value, because maybe there is some economical sector that are able to put on the floor this type of economical value and say, okay, I buy you, I can give you your value, and you can create your community outside. It's not a market now. We need to create a more use a vocabulary that can be understandable for the communities. Okay, we have €1, 12 euros of benefits. Okay, but it's not a market now. For the protection of the habitats and species, and in the species I put also the human species, is not a market value. Just to.
And I think you speak about this tension between the environment and the economy there, where we find ourselves in, continuously trying to figure out what is the pathway that we can take to ensure a sustainable future rather than just a destructive or exploitative future. And you're absolutely right. We are still trying to figure out how to do this. We're still trying to figure out how to put people into the center of our decision making, rather than saying, oh, well, there is money, and like we just capture it in that because that's a value that we can quantify. But we're trying to figure out the best ways or the best practices on how to qualitatively and quantitatively assess our futures and how to get there sooner rather than later. Alrighty, so I know there are still questions in the chat. We will get to them, or maybe Massi and Francesco, if you want to type them out, that would also be an opportunity. I just want to move on to the interactive bit of the workshop, just so we can get everybody involved and get us all a bit excited for telling our stories. So I'll give you a very brief overview of why we're coming here, why we are here today. So why use storytelling in general? I think we spoke about this already. It's humanizing complex issues. We're not just talking about climate change or not just talking about destruction, but we're actually putting a human dimension to it, which then makes it easier for us to actually connect to the story. It's also about, as already mentioned in the panelists or during the panelist session, it's about policy evaluation and in creating some transparency and accountability. And with that comes the creating of trust among our constituencies, among our stakeholders that are involved in the policy making and decision making. And last but not least, it's also a participatory policy making issue. So when we tell stories, when we humanize experiences, and when we make complex issues much more digestible, it's easier getting people involved. It's easier to get us all saying like, oh no, this isn't right. We should all do something about it because I can actually identify with the story. So for today, we're going to learn the methodology of storytelling together. So that means that we hope that all of you can participate actively in the process of storytelling. And if you don't want to jump on the Jamboard that I will show you in a second, we encourage you to sit at home or in your office, wherever you are, use a pen and a paper and craft your own story. So today is really about getting that, getting the inspiration and getting that passion about how do you tell a story. What are the challenges and what are the opportunities of how to use a story and how to craft it. So we'll go through this together. A little bit of housekeeping. As usual, respectful communication, which we have done anyways, and I know it's a moot point, but I just want to reiterate it, respectful communication. I've already seen you all use the chat thoughtfully. At any point, if you have any questions or any thoughts, please just put them in the chat. What we would also encourage you to do, if you feel comfortable turning on your camera and speaking to us, we encourage everybody to do that. All you'll have to do is raise your hand and we'll make sure that you can come on, turn on your camera and give it all a bit more life. And of course, participate actively, because the storytelling is not just about us telling you stories. We want to hear from you and we want to learn from you. So it's really it's very much a co-learning experience that we hope to experience today. And just a very brief overview of what we will be working on. First, we will work on the story parameters, which means creating a character. And a character could be an organization you know, a person you know, it could be a community that you know. And we want to identify what are the motivations and weaknesses, what are the challenges that they are experiencing, and then we describe their world. How did you experience coming across this community or this organization? What are some of the challenges that you've seen with them and some of the obstacles? In the second part of the Jamboard, we will then craft a story together about where we start a beginning, a middle, and a happy ending, hopefully. Now, that said, we as the panelists, we will choose and select the stories that we believe are most helpful for the story structure. So we want to have all of your inspiration, but if we don't necessarily pick out your particular thing, it's just because maybe it doesn't work in the story that we have envisioned. But please give share your experiences and your passion with us. So now I would invite you all to go onto the Jamboard. I will share this in the chat as well, so you can come on there. Hold on there. We have this here. So the chat, you have the Jamboard now in the chat, and I will share the storyboard with you here, the Jamboard. I can see a lot of people have joined already. This is great. I will very briefly show you how to use the Jamboard. On the left-hand side, there is a sticky note, and it comes up in different colors. And here we ask you, tell me where you're from. So I'm an Austrian living in Ireland. So now you can see that the post-it came online. If you're still looking at the Zoom board, you should be able to see that. Otherwise, you should be able to see that in your Jamboard, that there is people typing in their ideas. There's two people living in Ireland, like Austrians living in Ireland. Oh, I can see, and you can see you can move them around if you want. Indonesia, I can see all the color coding. That's great. That's fantastic. While you do this, I want you to pay attention to the very top where it says expand frame bar. There are some arrows on the right-hand side there. And we can move between the frames if you click on these arrows. I'll give you another couple minutes just to make sure that you all know how the Jamboard works. You can see you can move your Post-its around. There's a lot of activity happening, so it looks brilliant. It looks very exciting there. Germany, Portugal, Italy, Mexican living in Barcelona. Yes, I like that. Indonesian living in Portugal, and Mozambique is also there. I would just encourage you to use the Post-it note, the sticky notes, rather than the text box, just so you know. Okay, I think we're good here. So again, click on the top part where it says next frame, and you should then be able to see the story parameters where we have the character traits and the settings and obstacles. So when we talk about character traits, as I said earlier, we want to identify a community, people that you've worked with, that you've come across, and that you've heard about. So for us, for example, what I've heard so far could have been a fishing community that was struggling. And we pick this apart in a little bit. So for now, we're just looking for some inputs of who the people could be and who the stories could be. What else did we hear today? We had a coastal community working on MPAs. And I invite you all to jump in and raise your hands if you want to explain or go into details there. I know my colleagues are typing in some responses there too. Let's see. A bit quiet there. What else did we hear about today? Rural community wanting a sustainably develop their local area. Absolutely. I don't know who put that on, but whoever put that on, would you like to elaborate? If you do. Me. Oh, there you go. Go on, Dave.
Yes. Oh, I suppose I can tell a 30-second story. In a previous role, I worked with a community who there was a big farming family in the community who also owned a bog adjacent to the community and their farm. And part of the bog had become like Dean, what's the word? It was in a bad condition from runoff from the farm. And so they said to a local community development group that they would be willing to rent it out. It could be used by the local community, and was there any grants available, and we could turn it into, first of all, get increase its health, and then maybe turn it into a community amenity. So anyway, very long story short, I suppose, by working with the local community and the local community development company over a period of about 5 or 10 years, this bog area was turned into an unofficial nature reserve, and then they got grants to put wooden paths around it and built a little building. So now there's an outdoor classroom there that the local schools are welcome to use, and local students go and do experiments there and monitoring. And as I was leaving that role, there was talk about that the family were going to sell the bog to if grant money could be found, so that it would become fully community owned. And so I suppose, on a superficial level, it's a story about restoring a bog. But when I tell it, and because I wrote grant applications for this, the pitch, I always kind of think of, depending on the audience you're dealing with, you have to kind of pitch it a certain way. And the story that I always used was that this is a story about a community that wanted to manage their own development, but in a sustainable way. And so about building community through a restoration project. And it works fantastically in the south of Ireland.
That sounds fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I also saw coastal communities in a touristic area. I'm not sure who put that up, but whoever did, would you be comfortable sharing your story? If you are, just put on your, raise your hand and we'll make you a panelist so you can share your story. I can see Indigenous people are there, researchers. I thought, yeah, we did hear about the researchers and the coastal community working on MPAs. There's a lot there. Let's just see. And co-establishing, co-management. Okay. I see everybody's being a little bit shy, so no worries. Sorry, what's an ONG?
Maybe NGO in French?
Maybe. Okay.
In
Is that
Spanish,
correct?
please.
Okay, sorry about that. All right, we put those two together. I thought we identified a new slang word, but we didn't. Like it's okay. There we go. NGOs. Perfect. All right. So we have identified a lot of different communities here and a lot of different characters as we will. So now it's about creating the settings and the obstacles around that. Now, Dave already mentioned that there was an issue around the bog itself and the community around the bog wanting to establish something that could be used by the community. Now, we've heard also in the panels earlier that there was something where the communities wanted to get involved. They wanted to protect the oceans, or they wanted to restore some of the resources that they had. So we'll just put some notes in there. It could be, let's see, protection of, well, hold on. Science. Some of the issues that we have as settings or obstacles could be plastic pollution. It could be restoration or resource degradation. I think we talked about that.
Just while you're adding in different things there, Jess, and as other people are building from their character traits onto the settings and obstacles maybe that they've encountered in their project, I'll just kind of say that I suppose what we're trying to do here is that, you know, we've all worked on projects like this, and maybe we are or we want to, and maybe we've written things like, you know, descriptions of work done that's kind of a bit more dry, like, you know, in research question, inputs, outputs, results, kind of conclusion, the end. And I suppose, you know, what that kind of presentation that maybe if the academics in the room are more familiar with, kind of hides the like emotional and evocative aspect of the work that you were doing with real people in real places. So I suppose what this kind of like the method that we're going through here helps us do is kind of think by like using kind of like, you know, parts of a story. So like characters, settings and obstacles. Was there a twist? You know, what are the emotions involved? You know, who was the key player? To kind of just to help us think about how could we tell this from someone else's point of view or more evocatively, and who are our audiences? And so why do we change? How can we change the way we tell the story or the frame we give the work we did, depending on who we want to talk to, you know, so that's kind of what we're trying to do here.
Thank you. And we can see there is a lot of activity happening here already. I was trying to organize it a little bit. So I can see there is a bit of pollution going on, and I say that in a very overarching term. So we have acoustic pollution, absolutely, noise pollution in the waters, or even, you know, in coastal areas. We have plastic pollution there. It came up twice, so we put that over here. Let's see, other ones would be probably destructive, like overuse of resources. I would think that would be one. Overuse of resources. We're just trying to organize some of the issues. But by the way, I saw something about protecting turtles nesting. Whoever put that up, do you want to talk about that? So just raise your hand if you feel like it, and again, we'll put you on there. Susanna, there you go.
Hi, it's me. I don't have a personal experience about this topic, but yesterday I did a kind of exercise with my kids, and one of them said that why not starting by saving the turtles nesting. So I think that there are some of that in the Mediterranean area. So, well, I think that was a different kind of topic to talk about.
Absolutely. And I think that's it, right? We talk about, like, amongst ourselves, we talk and create a lot of stories, but then when we talk to children and when we talk to our peers, we understand that there's different things that then come to the forefront. I see somebody else has their hand raised. Who do we have here? Adamu. You should now be able to use your microphone. If you want to speak, you should now be able to.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Welcome.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I just have little to say. I'm a oceanographer. So the story I have to tell about ocean is, the first day I work in Nigeria City for oceanography and MaREI research. Now, the first day I got to my workplace, I was looking at the ocean. I was at the high water mark, looking at the ocean, looking at the tide, and how the tide was going and coming. So I was not thinking that there must be a relationship between this water and the coastal area. Now there I begin to develop an issue. I want to research to see what is really the relationship between the coastal and the ocean itself. So this is how my research started. And this is how I started getting people interest to get other people to also pick interest on how to see the reason why the ocean has a relationship with the coastal area. The ocean is bringing certain things to the coastal area, and the coastal area is also taking certain things to the ocean. So this is the little story I have to tell. Thank you.
I think we caught most of it. There was a little bit, the connection was a little bit not the best there in between, but if I correct me if I'm wrong, but what I heard is that you look at the ocean, you see that there's a lot of things happening there, but it's about figuring out what works in the region and how you can make sure that we have the resources for a long time. Did I somewhat get that correctly?
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, you're on, you're still on. Yeah.
Yeah, well, what I said is, when I go to my workplace, the first day I assume duty, I work in Nigeria Institute for Oceanography and MaREI research. Now, when I was at the beach, that is the high water mark, so I was looking at how the tide was rising, was going and coming. And I started to think that there must be an impact this ocean is having on the coastal area, and that there is also an impact again the coastal area is having on the ocean. So there is exchange of material, and this is how my research started. And this I get one other thing to key into it, that there is a relationship between the ocean and the coastal area. This is the little story I have to tell. Hello? Yep,
we heard you there. Yeah, there is some issues there. Yeah, I hear you there. Okay.
It's okay. No, I don't have anything against it. That's right.
Okay, I think we heard there, it's good to get your input there. Now, just moving on to the board, I see it's getting fuller and fuller, and there's a lot. I tried to organize a few things there. I think one more point that I would want to do here is education. Let's see. There we go. Okay. I'd say now that we spend a bit of time on the story parameters. Now, as you can see, we have a lot of input. Obviously, we're not going to be able to dive into each individual story here, but what we will do is we'll pick one story and we'll just try to get everybody connected with that story and craft that together based on everything that we've talked about so far. I think that would be okay. Should we maybe move on, because we heard a lot from the panelists about the fishing communities? Should we stay with this story for now, I think? So what I will do is I move on to the next frame at the top, which then jumps into the introduction. Now, in between, I will jump back and forth between the story parameters and the introduction, and I will copy and paste some of the post-its that we have there. But to get us started here, we start with the struggling fishing community. Okay, So what we want to do now is to really describe that story, like really describe the community. What are some of their experiences? What are some of the challenges that we already heard about today? And I think one of the challenges that Francesco mentioned was the fishing community. They cared about the quality of fish over the quantity of fish. Quantity of fish. Yeah, so that's one of the issues that we heard about, right? I think maybe one of the reasons why they succeeded. Now, again, I want you to really think about your own experiences and fishing communities that you may be aware of. And again, jump back to the setting some obstacles if you want to. But we just trying to figure out some of these parameters around the introduction, why that fishing community is actually struggling. So we also, yeah, go on.
Sorry, I was just going to jump in there, just maybe in case people are kind of thinking, if you haven't worked with fishing communities, or if you're thinking of other communities or projects that you've worked on. I suppose what we're trying to do this morning is learn a method through a specific example. So if this specific example isn't exactly relevant to your work, but what you can still do is, what we've got on the board there's you struggling fishing community, quality of fish over quantity of fish, but like also because this is storytelling and this is the introduction to the community. The other things that you might think about here to bring up are like, what does the community look like? What are the people like? And for the purposes of this morning, I suppose it doesn't, like, if it just to helps you learn the method, it doesn't matter what community you're thinking of. Just to think through that, and you can add whatever makes sense to you maybe. We'll take on a specific example just so that we can work through it, but you can be thinking about using the methods to describe your own work.
Exactly. So it's really, and I think we said that about the inspiration of understanding that whatever issue you experience, there's going to be a lot of layers in that. And to understand these layers, you obviously have to understand where that community is coming from. So if we're looking at a marginalized community or an organization or a single person sometimes that does a lot in coastal restoration, for example, we need to understand where they're coming from. What is their motivation to, do certain things? Now, we heard about Amandu and being an oceanographer, and, like, it already sets a scene for me. I already imagine that he would look at the ocean in a very different perspective than I would. I'm a social scientist, so I look at the ocean perhaps maybe from, from a leisure perspective. So it's that understanding that there's different ways of looking at a community and understanding them. And we see a lot there already. Climate change is always a big one, isn't it? Also because we don't really know how climate change affects everybody. And even in a community, climate change can affect people very differently. Exactly, weather and climate, what is it like in your story? Now, I don't know if you followed the news at all, but Ireland was battered with Storm Babette the last couple of days, and Dave will attest to that. We haven't seen floods like that in cities, and it's unsettling. But it's also on the other side of it, we saw communities coming together, supporting each other and saying, all right, we build up GoFundMe pages and we make sure that this won't happen again. Illegal fishing, yes, we talked about that earlier. We also talked about artisanal fishing. Artisanal, that's probably, there we go. We talked about that and the difference between the two. And I think Francesco mentioned that illegal fishing and artisanal fishing are two very different things that are sometimes thrown in together, saying like, oh, that is the same. Like, no, it's not. So we have that. We have the fishing pressures. So I've seen a lot of things. If anybody feels comfortable and want to put on the camera, please raise your hand. We'd love to hear from you. This is about us learning from you as much as you are learning from us. Let's see.
Well, people might be raising their hands there. I might just say again, just on the kind of like techniques of it, and think about setting the scene. Like, is this do people, is this kind of a Mediterranean community, or is the one that you're thinking of a Mediterranean community where people sit by the pier and eat their dinners in the evenings? Or is it like an Arctic community where, everybody, like loads of sleepy houses under snow and people are in with fires lighting, things like that in the evenings?
Which again tells you that every area and every geography will experience different issues when it comes to struggling, or when it comes to fishing communities. You all have very different experiences. I tell you, I was living in Hong Kong for a while, and fishing communities there had very different experiences than fishing communities here in Ireland. And it's just interesting to see how people interact and react and the challenges that they have. Some of them are the same and some of them are not. Lack of surveillance of the protected area, that is absolutely an issue, and it probably comes into the illegal fishing over here. I'm just going to reorganize some of these here. Competing for space with marine renewables. Oh, who put that up? I would like to hear about this if anybody feels so inclined to talk about that. I wonder, maybe Massi, do you have any experience with this? Am I putting you on the spot?
Yeah, it's fine. Yes, of course. Yeah, that's another issue. When I was talking about trade-offs, of course, I go back to my presentation. This is the point of view of the ecosystem service approach, but this is the point. I mean, when you push on one sector, probably you create some issues for another one. So it's about spatial planning, of course. Today we have a name for this situation, but in other words, it's about finding some solutions for coexistence, at least of some of these activities, not all of them. Sometimes decisions are required, necessary, so not all the activities can be undertaken in the same place, but there could be some balance between them. And yeah, I go back to my example. When you put all the different interests to the table and you try to understand how it's going on for one or the other, or if there are some synergies or collaborative spaces, there could be a way for addressing this specific aspect. And of course, I go back to my example. There are also some tools or know-how that can help, of course.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. We do have Edna now. You should be able to unmute yourself and talk to us. I know you raised your hand there. Edna? Right, maybe there is some technical, maybe it takes a minute to get on there. But I also see that Susanna has her hand up. Susanna?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I just wanted to talk about the fishing community here in Galicia. I'm from a small town, and there are different, many people working fishing and different types of fishing. I mean, it's people, aquaculture is important in mussels and other bivalves, and there are people that goes every day fishing. They fish in the estuaries here in Galicia, and there are many people that goes away, far away, some of them to Ireland, but other to the Maldives, and spend several months on the boats. So I think that most of you are familiar with fishing and people, fishermen mainly. The main problem that I see here is that there is no young people wanted to take to this profession. I don't know if you can find this topic interesting for our story, or can be included or not. But I just wanted to raise the topic.
I think you raise an important point there, and one of them, it might be out-migration and young people, right? Mm-hmm. In marginalized communities, that is often an issue, because the opportunities are obviously not as as rich maybe as in bigger cities. So absolutely, Susanna, we'll put that there in the middle. And I tried to organize some of this in spatial planning technology. Edna, if you want to speak, you have your raised hand, and you should be able to unmute yourself and talk to us. We'll give you a minute there just in case. Yep, there you go. Okay. There you go.
I think she said she's having connection issues.
Oh, right. Sorry, I didn't check the chat there. Yeah. So you can see there's a lot of different things happening here. So from a story perspective, now we have all of these different inputs that could tell a story. Now, I know Dave said the geography and the experience there, that plays a lot, that plays a big role, right? But if we stick with the struggling fishing community, if we negative news from biased press, maybe that comes into stakeholder collaboration. I would also put the migration into young people, because that means we need to understand the community. We need to understand the community issues there. We see competition between fishing industry and fish predator species. So that also comes into maybe in between here, technology and stakeholders, as in maybe it's more of a science thing of understanding the ecosystem better. That's how I would see that. And then there's resource degradation, so we put that over there. Lack of knowledge, I think that's a big one. I see, Susanna, do you still have people? Hold on, I see two people having their hands raised. There
Sorry.
we go. Okay, that's all right. Lack of young, skilled fishermen to prepare the next generation.
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello, can I say something?
Go for it, yeah.
Yeah, although I just want to contribute to the fishing story.
Yeah.
I'm a oceanographer. I look at the ocean as a pond of fish generally. So I'm looking at the welfare of the fishes, because if the environment of fish is good, the fish is also good. Now, my observation or my story I want to tell so far is majority of these fishermen don't care about the environment of the fish, but they only care about the quality of the fish. And you find out that majority of them that live at the coastal area, they contributed to the pollution of this water too, but they don't even care about the health of these fishes. They only care about the quality of fishes they are getting, and it's not going to be possible. You can't be considering the quality of fish without considering the environment of the fish. And aside from that, again, I know that again, it reduces, it can increase the competition in fishing, and that can also maybe discourage other people, because if you're not big enough or you're not brand enough, and you have to go far before you get fishes, those are the problems that are contributing to the scarcity of fishes. That's just what I want to say. Sorry. Hello?
Yep, I hear you there. And I think it is exactly what Francesco said earlier, or not exactly, but he did allude to the fact that we do care about the quality, right? You want to make sure that you have the quality of the fish, so that you can actually, so that you don't just end up with like small quantities, but actually the thing that allows you to live off the fish, right?
Yeah, but they don't care about the quality of the environment of the fishes. Hello?
They don't.
The fishermen. Yeah, the fishermen only care about the quality of the fish, but they don't care about the quality of the environment of the fishes. Because yeah, you get to know this, their attitude towards the ocean itself. I'm not looking at the pond, the pond they build. I'm looking at those people that go to the ocean to fish, or rivers to fish. They don't care about the quality of the rivers. Only the scientists care about the quality of the rivers. And this can increase their competition, because if you don't care about the quality of the environment of the fishes, only few fishes will survive. And if only few fishes survive, the area the fishes will be found will be limited. And only the people that would bring finance will access the fish. Other people that don't have big money will not get access to the fishes. And that's what I'm saying.
Okay, but so can I ask you then, is it maybe an education piece? Do you think that is part of it?
I didn't get you.
Do you think it's an issue of education? Like
Yeah.
why we okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that that's a valuable point that we need to invest into more of the education bit. And then again, that comes into stakeholder collaboration, so that the education is not just for the scientists alone, but that what we learn is actually shared in a way that is digestible for the community, and where they then become the stewards of the resource.
Yeah.
Can I jump in there maybe?
Go for it.
Yeah, I suppose just to bring this back to techniques of storytelling, because this is, this is what we're here to kind of discuss and learn today. So like, say in that story, if that continued, I suppose then that story might be about education and environmental improvement through education. So like that becomes the kind of central theme or something like that. You could imagine an endpoint, like you say, just where, scientists and fishers and a community learn to work better together and to understand each other better, and an environment is better protected through that kind of education process. So it's the education is the story to kind of be brought out there, if that was the story. I know we're talking hypothetical.
Exactly, yeah. And it comes back to, what is your story? How do you figure out your story, and how do you tell it then? So I know we only have about 20 minutes left, and I know we could spend ages on this. As you can see, it's a lot of what are your experiences, and really reflecting on what you've seen, what you've encountered, and the challenges that you know about it, that you heard about. So if we now move on to the next frame, that is the middle part. So what we want there is really, where is the struggling bit? Now, I'm only going to spend about 5 to 7 minutes on this, and 5 to 7 minutes on the end before we wrap the entire workshop up. But what we want to do here is, we already established that we have a struggling fishing community, right? That is the beginning part of the story. We said maybe out-migration, or maybe it's a... will we go with the out-migration, or will we go with, because Susanna mentioned the young people, and yeah, maybe out-migration is an issue there. Maybe. Okay, so then the challenges there are, right? So if these are our two, we've established those two are our main issue. Then what are some of the other issues that come with out-migration? So that means that, for example, infrastructures are then being, they are not being maintained, because there's not enough there's not enough people using the infrastructure. Perhaps they're not updated enough. So maybe we have a port development that wouldn't be suitable for newer vessels. Port development is outdated, for example. So that could be, and it comes together back to the infrastructure. But what I want you to get to think about is, if you have your main setting, you understand that there is the protagonist, if you will, the struggling fishing community, and you identify the main big obstacle that they're dealing with. The next part is about understanding what else comes with that. Where is then that big, that big climax issue? Because I see. Go on.
Yes, no, I got to jump in again there. Just, like, again, to get us thinking in terms of telling stories, because say you were trying to communicate your research or your project to a group of school kids, or whatever the audience is. The middle of the story, this is maybe where, who's the villain of the story, or like, what's the calamity that happens? And villain, I don't mean like, oh, it's Mr. X or whatever, but the villain might be just a policy that's completely standing in the way, or otherwise, years of underdevelopment that causes the out-migration in this case, maybe. But so yeah, like it's these kind of archetypal story elements, thinking through them kind of help you develop a much more evocative way of describing. And like, I mean, if you were trying to communicate your work to school kids, in this case, you might have started with Once Upon a Time or something like that. So yeah, it's just to try and get us to keep thinking through these kind of the storytelling element.
Exactly. And I think you touched on an important point there. You will tailor your story to your audience. So if you're talking to school kids, you will refrain from saying infrastructure development. You will say the ships can't come into the port, or, you know, like whatever language you want to use, but you will simplify the language. And I think that's an important part, where if you tell a story to a politician, you may use words that you've seen them frequently use in, you know, policy briefs and whatnot. So it's really about who do we identify as the villain there? Adamu, go on, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, also I want to contribute again to this storytelling. You know, one of the things that makes storytelling more easier is it is very important to identify that area that interests you most, and why does it interest you most, and why do you want people to know? And if people know, what will be the benefit? I think this will help you to tell story better. That story that interests you more, why does it interest you, and why do you want people to know the story? And if people know the story, what will be the benefit? I think this will help in storytelling too.
100%, and you're so right. It is the narrative that you build around it, right? So if you want people to actively engage, and that could be through voting mechanisms or to, you know, whatever it is, you want to tell the story in a narrative that is digestible and that has an outcome where people say, I can do this. I've heard the story. I can see how that relates to me. I can do this too. I can support this in any way. So I do agree with you there. Let's see. And I see there's a lot coming in. High interest rates and local loans for infrastructure and equipment. Absolutely. So the economic side of things is a huge issue there. Access to funds. Now, if I think about the young people, Masi, go on. You had your hand raised.
I didn't want to stop you. Go on with your story, then I come back with mine.
Oh, no, go on. You
Okay, but before you ask me, I got some stories about conflicts in the use of the area, what they call spatial planning. So I go back to that and I try to make this exercise. So the introduction was that we are in Slovenia, in Koper, it's a city, and there was this plan for urban industrial development supported by the Port Authority. And the fact was that the transitional areas of an internal lagoon were close to be completely destroyed. So it means that all the habitats were completely were at risk, and the consequence was also an impoverishment of the landscape as a result. So the protagonists were a group of local NGOs who asked and then obtained a small change in the urban development plan. That small change saved that part of the area where we have the flows from internal fresh water to the salt water, and they saved that part, and they created a protected area for defending what they obtained in the time. And then there is the end of the story, but we are just at the middle, right?
We are just at the middle, but you can't tell the end of the story because we're going to move on to the end in just a minute. Yeah.
The end of the story is that today, the real estate value of the areas around that new protected area, the name is Skocianski Zatok, it's a real story, has incredibly increased. So they defend, protected an area at risk. They increase the value of the real estates around that area. And today, one of the main donors of the protected area is the Koper Port Authority, because they recognized how their intervention was a win-win for all of them. So there is also an happy ending.
I love happy endings. That sounds amazing. So what you're telling me there is that because you were able to engage, and because in this story, the stakeholders were able to communicate with each other and have that trust, they were able to come to an outcome that, is a happy ending. And I think the other thing is like not everything has a happy ending, right? So we do need to find, I think, especially in policymaking and in the challenges that we see, we do need to find the stories that are both happy endings and not happy endings to then create an action, to then get to that action point. I hope that made sense. Okay, so we're going to move on to the end bit now. We're not going to spend too much time on it because I think at this stage you have kind of understood what the storytelling technique is about. It's about starting with the introduction, understanding and getting to the layers of the community that you want to tell the story about. And that means that you have to talk to the community and understand where they're coming from, because somebody who just out or immigrated in a coastal region versus a fishing family that has been in the region for hundreds of years, their experience of living in that area will be very different, obviously. So it's important to understand those nuances. So in the conclusion, and I think Dave put this up, what is the twist in your story? And how is the problem solved? How does everyone end up living happily ever after? Now, I said it at the very beginning, I am a social scientist. So my answer to everything is that we need to bring stakeholders together. We need to bring citizens together in one room, maybe lock that door and say, you figure out your problems, talk to each other and figure out solutions that work for everybody. But perhaps this is not, the most realistic in some cases, but I'll put that up anyways, people talking to each other. That would be one outcome. And I think maybe another outcome or another understanding. Adamu, go ahead, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, just like you said, I'm a scientist and I'm also a social scientist. Because yeah. I'm a writer, I write very well, write about politics, write about many things. So, just like you said, storytelling is one of the best principle of a writer. You tell a lot of stories, but one of the most important key in storytelling is, just like you say, introduction, the importance of the stories, and a conclusion. I just added to what you said: introduction, importance of the stories, and conclusion of the stories. I think that's what I wanted to. I don't know if it makes sense.
I agree with you there. Every story needs to come to an end, and that ending is then that part that can inspire you. I see that approval, let's see, what was that there? Approval for the master plan for the use and management of the protected area. Now, for a restoration project and for fishing community, like that would be the absolute top, I believe. And I think we've heard a lot of the happy ending with Francesco as well. He already alluded to the fact that it was the fishing community seeing the benefits, and then they said, we want more of this. I see enthusiasm is there. Yes, you do need enthusiasm. Now, of course, some stories may not be so enthusiastic. Some stories might come out with, a little bit of a solemn outcome. But I think you're right. We need to tell the passion. And I think experiences fishermen talking proudly to their grandchildren about how wonderful it is to go out to sea, catch the fish, and feeding families for the whole town. Now, that's a feel-good ending, if you ask me. I also think the plot twist community gets a grant to develop port infrastructure. After the success, they think, what can we do together next? So, that's the important bit of like, okay, well, the story ends. That doesn't mean your activity needs to end. It's just one of the opportunities, one of these examples of how a story was created and how you then can develop further. Okay, I would love to spend all day on this because, as you can see, I'm super passionate about this, but I will stop sharing my screen now. We do have a few last resources for you. The narrative has to include a clear vision of the future and how we can proactively contribute to the achievement of this vision. Absolutely. If you want to, All of the slides are going to be available to you, so you can maybe plan and work this out on your own time and kind of figure, how would you tell the story? And if you create a story and you can share that with us, we would love to see your stories and love to see how you would, your narratives. But for now, I am going to stop sharing. And I have a couple comments from Dave now, I think. Do you? Yes, PREP4BLUE actually supports mentoring.
Oh, yes, sorry. I thought you meant in the chat.
No.
Yeah. So just to say to everybody, one of PREP4BLUE's roles is supporting anyone doing research and innovation, any projects working in the areas of Mission Ocean. So, you know, the methods that we're teaching you today, if you if you are using them, or if you want to use them, and if you come up with any struggles or applying them to specific projects, or if you want to get in touch with us to be put in touch with an expert that works in, that kind of, you might be working on a specific problem that's kind of like adjacent to your area or within your area, but you could do with some specific advice or anything like that. We invite you all, our door is always open. Please get in touch. We'll do our best to point you in the right direction, help you ourselves, help you use the methods that we've been explaining today. So yeah, don't feel that this is kind of a workshop and it ends now. It's our door is always open, and we'll do our best to help you as your projects develop.
Absolutely. So we hope that this is a starting point for collaboration, and we are going to be working on both PREP4BLUE and Blue Mission for a few years to come. So you will hopefully hear a lot more from us, and that means that we also want to hear from you. Now, the technique that we showed you today is just one technique of storytelling. There is many more, and if you're interested in different aspects of storytelling, please get in touch. I do have a lot of resources and a lot of reading material. And of course, engage with our social media, engage with our webpage. And I think maybe a final parting word for this. I thank you all for participating today. I thank you all for your stories and for your engagement. I want to thank MaREI, Francesco, and Justine for their inputs of how, the stories that you were telling mean so much. Because I think sometimes people forget that there's people working on these projects, and it's nice to put a face onto it and seeing the passion. This is my favorite bit of doing stuff like that, seeing everybody's passion. So with this, I will close the session unless there's any final words. No? Okay. Thank you, everybody. And I'll see you soon.
Thank you. Thanks for joining, everyone.
Bye.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.